What is up, Maniacs? I am Zach, and I am the Milly Maker Maniac. Welcome to our game-by-game breakdown. This is where I take you through the spreadsheet that I build every week that helps us find good matchup advantages based off of PFF grades against the opponent. We use this spreadsheet to start narrowing down our player pool and looking at different game environments, starting to think through game scenarios that are going to lead to fantasy points and help us start narrowing down players that we're going to use to build that $1 million lineup. That's the whole point. That's why we're here. That's why we are the Milly Maker Maniac. Is to take down this Milly. This is the week we're going to knock it out. If you haven't done so already, please hit that subscribe button and please like and comment. Leave your questions in the comments and I will get to those in the next video if possible. Well, without further ado, let's jump into it. Our first game of the week that we are going to touch on is Cincinnati and Chicago. This game is in Cincinnati. Not sure on weather on that game yet. We'll have to check that out. We're seeing a pretty solid matchup advantage on the Chicago side for their offense. Anybody against Cincinnati's defense is getting set up for a really good week. We saw that last week with the Jets, who have been a really bad offense for the majority of the year, have a really good week and possibly save Justin Fields' career for at least one more week. So this week, the team playing that awful Bengals defense is the Chicago Bears. Caleb Williams has been a little hit or miss, but I do think with Ben Johnson at the helm, I think this is a really good spot for him to just try to get Caleb right to help him build some confidence. So I do think that they probably will try to move the ball through the air a decent amount. The run advantage here is exceptional. So for DeAndre Swift, we could definitely be looking at that. Obviously, Mononga's been getting a few more carries, but I think Swift is more of their go-to guy. He would be the guy that I'd be interested in pulling out of this game as far as a running back goes. Odunze is going to be attractive. We'll jump over here in a second and look at pricing, but just across the board, Chicago Bears is an attractive play this week at all their positions. Cincinnati isn't grading out as well here. Again, we have to remember at the PFF grades that this is cumulative, so this includes games with Jake Browning. This also includes games that they had, play the Browns and the Packers, like really good defenses, so their grades are going to be a little bit less here. With Joe Flacco, their grades have been better, so I don't think this is as much of a disadvantage for the Bengals offense as it is showing right now. It's probably more of a neutral matchup, but I do expect Chicago to score a decent amount of points, and the over-under on this game right now is at 52.5 on the high end, so Vegas is expecting there to be a decent amount of points in this game and a decent chance for a shootout. So, and the nice thing about the Bengals is it's so easy to stack. We can do single stacks with Flacco and Jamar or T. Higgins. We can also get Chase Brown in there. So, I mean, really, exactly who you need to add in there. Samaje Perine has to mix in it a little bit, but Chase Brown's still the play we would want in DFS. Samaje doesn't have the upside of getting to like a 25-point game. So let's look at pricing on this. Caleb Williams is going to be pretty attractive, 5,700. He's down here in the range of like QB 12 or so in price. So that one's going to be pretty attractive for us. Swift is a reasonable 6,100 as well. Definitely be interested in that. Odunze, definitely underpriced at 6,600. We'd like to see DJ Moore a little lower, but we can still build him into some of our Caleb Williams stacks. Probably won't use him outside of the Caleb Williams stacks. Let's see if Burnen's going to play. Got a concussion, so he might play. Let's see what Zacchaeus has got going on day-to-day. So we'll keep an eye on that. If both those guys are out, then Moore becomes more attractive. And then if Komet's out, then Loveland becomes really attractive at that 3,300. So we'll have to gauge that. Part when we're going through this game by game, like we're just looking at what we know so far. And as we all know, the week evolves quite a bit with injuries and more news that comes out. So that'll definitely change how we attack this game depending on who's available for the Bears offense. It would honestly be easier for us to get to all these guys if these guys are out. But if they're in, we'll have to just navigate. Primarily, these guys would be considered for me in Caleb Williams stacks. Burden, maybe a little bit outside of that, he could be a pump play on non-Williams teams as well. All right, let's jump over to Cincinnati side. Actually, quickly, let's see what the defense is. 3,100. Probably not getting there, but maybe. Cincinnati's O-line is so bad that, sacks are inevitable, and Flacco has been known to turn the ball over. So we can consider it, but I think there's going to be some better options around that price point, but we'll check it out as we get later into the week and see other defenses as well, as far as whether or not Chicago will be a big part of my player pool. All right, let's go back over to Cincy. Flacco, 5,600. See if there's any update. It isn't his throwing shoulder. It changes a lot if Flacco's not playing. If Flacco's not playing, we would be interested in Bears, but I probably would not be too interested in any Bengals. But if Flacco's playing, definitely interested. Chase Brown at 5,900 is a really nice value, especially if Flacco plays. Chase, 8,400, a little bit harder to get to. T. Higgins at 5,900. He'll be definitely in the player pool. It'll be one of the more core plays of the week at that number if Flacco plays. What did Fant do last week? Involved a little bit. Sounds like Gesicki. Yeah, Gesicki's on IR, so not touching Bengals defense ever. So a lot of this is going to be dependent on Flacco. I'll play Jamar and Flacco stacks, but I won't play him outside of that, just at that price point. If he has a game that you have to have, he's bringing the quarterback along with him. If he doesn't, then there's going to be cheaper. If he doesn't have that game that you have to have him, then he's not worth the 8,400 anyways, so we would want to go to Higgins as far as trying to take down a big GPP like the Milly Maker. Chase, it can be a fine play, more like smaller field stuff and things along those lines, like because you don't have to have the perfect lineup and you're locking in some pretty guaranteed points there with Chase. But for the big tournaments that we're trying to take down, you need cheaper guys to hit their ceiling rather than expensive guys to hit their median outcome in order to take down a GPP. All right, let's move on to our next game here. This one is the Minnesota Vikings versus the Detroit Lions. This is in Detroit. It is looking like, from a grade standpoint, it's looking like this is going to be a rout by the Lions, that they're just going to dominate this game. Across the board, it is a pretty sweet setup for the Lions. So I like Goff. I like all of his stacks. I like J-Mo this week. We'll look at pricing here in a second, but hasn't done anything this year, but they didn't pay him $80 million to not have big games. He's gonna get involved. So it might be this week, it might not be, but we'll definitely play some lineups as if it is this week. Minnesota, you're getting J.J. McCarthy back. Everything's looked really bad on that end. The offensive line has been blocking very poorly. Just want to, pass blocking about middle of the pack, but Detroit's pass rush has been really solid over here towards the top echelon. So, yeah, it definitely looks like a mismatch. Looks like Detroit should dominate. We'll build some J.J. McCarthy stacks, though, despite all this. I mean, there are some scenarios where this becomes a shootout. More than likely, I think this is just Detroit winning by, covering the spread, scoring 30-plus points and winning by 10 or more. Let's look at pricing. Laporta, 4,300. It wouldn't be a core play, but definitely will mix into our stacks with Goff. J-Mo, 4,800. I'll be all over that. He's going to have boom games here soon. It's coming. It might be this week, and at 4,800, I want to be on board for that. I'm Ross St. Brown. He's more attractive to me than Chase at this price point. Definitely, obviously, mix him in with Goff, but might mix him in a little bit outside of our Goff stacks. Gibbs at 8K. Of all the expensive running backs, he's actually probably the most attractive, although McCaffrey and Taylor do have really juicy matchups this week. We'll get to those in a bit. So, might have to spend up a running back again this week. It's hard to get to that 9,800. We'll look for other options that are cheaper. But it might be another spend up week at running back. And this week, I think there's not going to be as many guys in the middling range that are going to have huge upside. But we'll dig more into that and get a better feel for how we're going to need to build rosters as we go through this. But Gibbs at 8K is definitely a solid value. Montgomery, you need like he has had 130-point game, but 18 doesn't really do it. Like you need 25-ish from your starting running back to have a chance. So I just don't think we can get there, even though this could be one of those games that he gets the random touchdowns. Goff at 6K though, that's a huge value. He'll be one of our core plays without a doubt. On the Minnesota side, we're going to be going to McCarthy. Solid punt play. Like in a division game, the O'Connell knows this defense well, and you never know what can happen in a division game. They've been trying to bring McCarthy along slowly, like he could have played the last 2 weeks, but they stuck with Wentz. Now Wentz is done for the year after playing with a really bad shoulder injury. It was he didn't really give them what they needed to win, but it was definitely a gutsy effort by Wentz. But that might be the last we see of him playing in the league. We'll see. But JJ McCarthy this week, there's a chance, maybe somewhere in the ballpark, like 3 or 4 lineups for me. I'll mix him in, just because with those weapons, you could throw 2 kind of Hail Mary type scenarios to Jefferson or Addison, and they take it the distance. So you never know. Addison 5,800 seems a little overpriced to me. Like he does have upside, and we were heavy on him a couple weeks ago against Philly. That played out well for us, but yeah, I like it a lot more at 5,100 than I do at 5,800. We'll see what else is in that range. Jefferson, he'll probably only be. I probably won't play much of him. It'll probably be a couple McCarthy stacks, but outside of that, I probably won't play much of him. Running back, it's going to be hard to get to as well. Jones would definitely be the better value, you would think, being a little cheaper, and he kind of dominated the snap share last week. More than likely, I'm just going to full fade this backfield, though. I don't think I get to either of these guys. So primarily just a couple of McCarthy stacks. I'm not really going to sprinkle this team across my player pool. I think the most likely scenario is that the Lions run away with this game and dominate. I don't want to mess with their defense. Let's see the Lions D. Yeah, that makes sense at 3,700. So maybe Chicago's D is getting a little bit more attractive as we see the other prices at defense. Yeah, the Packers are the other one that jump off the spreadsheet for sure. So far, it looks like we need to spend up a defense and our running back. So it'll be intriguing to see where we can find value. Let's move on to our next game. This is Carolina Panthers versus the Green Bay Packers. Pretty big advantage here for the Packers. We can see one of the highest rated quarterback grades of the week. Big advantage. Good pass blocking grade towards the top of the advantages there in the pass blocking versus pass rush. Grade matchups. They're getting healthier at receiver. The hard thing about playing Jordan Love lineups is you don't know who the hell to stack him with besides Kraft. So I'll dig more into this matchup throughout the week, get a feel for if it looks like there's any like archetype of receiver that makes the most sense, or if it's a big advantage for the tight end. Things along those lines, we'll look and see if Kraft might be the guy to go here. But just Love in general, maybe we'll play some Love naked. It's kind of hard, though, because, like if he has a big game, more than likely he's bringing one guy along with him. I mean, most likely that guy is Kraft, but, it could be any of the receivers if there's a big player, too. So we'll have to dig into that. We'll look at pricing and everything on that. Kind of a neutral matchup for the run game, and then a pretty big advantage for the defense, but I don't think I'll be able to get to the 4K. On the Carolina side, we'll see if it's Dalton or Bryce Young. From what I'm hearing so far is it's likely that Young is going to play, but it looks like a tough spot. Canales did say in the press conference this week that he's probably going to change it up and go more into leaning on Rico Dowdle, do less of the split backfield. So we should expect Dowdle to get more touches, but I don't know that it's going to matter this week against Green Bay. But in future weeks, that Dowdle could be back into our player pool. Let's jump over and look at pricing. 5,800 for Dowdle. Getting more in range for sure, but still going to be hard to get to. Bryce Young, that's probably a no-go for me this week. Yeah, McMillan's too expensive for this matchup. Don't really like either of the guys to punt with this week either. Not going to do anything at tight ends. Yeah, the only thing that is somewhat usable here to me is maybe Dowdle, but I think this is going to be a Green Bay domination type scenario. Josh Jacobs at 7,700 is attractive, but he has been splitting more with Emmanuel Wilson. So if they get out to a big lead, I know that he's been kind of banged up too. If they get out to a big lead, I think they would take him out of the game very quickly and just let Wilson run to protect him. Love at 6,100 is very attractive. It's very attractive. And then all the receivers are super cheap. So we can build, like the hard part is like you don't know who it's going to be, but you would anticipate like if Jordan Love has a game where he can win you a Milly Maker, you would expect one of these pass catchers to come along. So Romeo Doubs and Tucker Kraft are by far the two most likely, but Christian Watson flashed last week coming off the big injury, but he looked pretty good. So we could definitely go there. I don't think Jade Reed's going to be back this week, but that should be coming in the near future. And Golden hasn't put up a score worthwhile for us yet, but he has that upside of getting a big player too. At some point, that's likely to happen. So we'll probably just build skinnies. I don't really want to do double stacks with Love. Really just want to try to figure out who's the one receiver that gets, one or two of the touchdowns. Kraft at 5,700. He's probably the most likely. Will be my like go-to stack with Love for sure. And then I'll sprinkle in the other guys in my Love stacks. All right, on to our next game. Denver at Houston. I'm not going to take too long on this one. We're going to look at the defenses because this is not a good matchup for either offense. This is going to be an ugly, low-scoring game more than likely. But let's look at pricing real quick and make sure we're not missing anything. But from the grade standpoint, should be good. I'm out on Knicks. Probably out on Stroud this week. Yeah. Dobbins, I'm probably out on. Marks, I'm probably out on. Yeah, I think I'm out on this whole game in general. Maybe Troy Franklin at 4,900. Maybe. Not interested in any of these guys. Defenses. Maybe both. Could be interested in both defenses. Again, probably going to be a spend-up week at defense, but both these teams can be in consideration for sure. All right, moving on. We didn't need to spend a lot of time on that one. On to the next one is New England Patriots and the Atlanta Falcons. Looks like another great matchup for Drake May. They're at home. Big matchup advantage across the board for the quarterback and a decent one for the running backs. So it might be we might be able to mix in Ramondre a little bit this week. For Atlanta, a lot of questions. Really bad showing last week against the Dolphins. Disadvantage is pretty much across the board. We'll see where Bijan's pricing is at this weekend, if it's going to be Penix or Cousins. Was digging into Atlanta's performance a little bit last week and actually saw that Cousins didn't play as bad as it looked. There's a few big drop passes that kind of killed their momentum on offense, but still, it was an awful effort by the Falcons. See if there's any updates on Penix. I think the expectation is he's going to play this week. Probably not too interested, but obviously London being out last week was big too. I'll have to keep an eye on this. I want to be super heavy on the Falcons, but I would definitely consider 4 to 5 Penix lineups if it's Penix and London's healthy. If not, then it's going to be a little bit harder to get to. Mooney was a disappointment last week. He dropped one of those big passes as well. He did have a big pass interference call go in his favor as well. So he did, don't see that in the box score, but he was involved a little bit more than what it looks like. But it just doesn't look like this is the spot. They looked really bad last week. The last time that happened, though, they came back. They were playing Washington's defense, though. New England has definitely improved as the year has gone on, and I trust more in Mike Vrabel. So probably going to be hard to get here at all this week. I think their defense is just mid, and I think Drake May is now very much a MVP candidate. At 6,500, he will be one of my core plays for sure. This opponent rank is very skewed. This is a much better matchup for May than what it looks like. especially a much better matchup than what May faced last week when he was QB1 on the week when he played the Browns. So, yeah, a lot of Drake May. Ramondre will definitely be in the player pool. I don't think I'll get to Henderson. He's just not getting enough touches. Obviously, he could bust a big one. He's a very fast player, very explosive player. But Ramondre's getting the bulk of the work and is more likely to punch it in. So Ramondre will be in the player pool for sure. Nice, and they've kept the receivers at reasonable prices, so we'll get to Diggs and Butte for sure. Hopefully this third opponent rank pulls people away from this game, because the reality is they have a huge advantage against the Atlanta defense. The grades show the Falcons defense to just be average. They played some kind of weak teams early in the year. If we go and look at like their game log, we can look at some of the offenses that they played, and it's like, oh yeah, they're not that great. But so Tampa Bay, obviously Tampa Bay is a good offense. Gave up 23 points there, but Minnesota, JJ McCarthy was awful in that game, and we don't know anything about McCarthy. Then they take on Carolina, and they give up 30. Take on Washington, they give up 27. Take on Buffalo. That was a crazy one. They only gave up 14 there. And then against San Francisco, they gave up 20. But San Francisco was very beat up during that. And then last week against Miami, who has been awful against everybody this year, they gave up 34. So people are high on the Falcons defense, and they think they're a good defense. I think they're average to below average. And with Drake May and these cheap passing weapons on the New England side, like, give me that all day. Booty at 5K, yes please. And Diggs at 5,700, also yes please. See where Henry's at, 3,700. He's definitely in play as well. So I like the Patriots a lot this week. Probably won't get to them on defense. Maybe. We're going to have to do some work on defense. Definitely got to do some more digging, figure out where the value is. Let's move on to this next game. This next game I think is going to be a lot of fun. We have the New York Giants, now without Cam Scatterboo, unfortunately, with his horrific injury that he experienced last week against the Eagles. Hate to see it. Love the energy that he was bringing, and he was just a good player. So sad to see that. Hopefully he heals up and he can come back next year and have a successful year and a successful career. But we are looking at this week and this week only. And I think people aren't going to target the San Francisco offense, their defense, as much as they should. I think this is the new Cowboys defense. They've played some bad teams since they've lost Fred Warner, and so they haven't looked as bad. Like, they played Houston last week and they held their own, but CJ Stroud had his best game of the year. So to me, that's just an indication that this defense is just going to get beat up without those stars. They have a whole bunch of nobodies now, and just a kind of a below average scheme in my mind. But yeah, so I think targeting the San Francisco defense is something I want to do week in and week out moving forward. I haven't been a huge Jackson Dart guy, but he continues to show week in, week out that he's not phased. I hope he doesn't get hurt. He does seem to make some poor decisions as far as taking care of his body and avoiding some hits. But this particular week, I like Jackson Dart against this defense. I also like Tyrone Tracy against this defense. So we'll look at all of the pieces and pricing. But I like Jackson Dart stacks. I think there's a good chance that this game shoots out. On the San Francisco side, they're getting Brock Purdy back more than likely. If they do get Purdy back, then I'm very intrigued in him. If they got Pearsall back, I would be even more intrigued. We'll see. It's kind of sounding like he's probably still a week or two away, but they have George Kittle back. They got CMC. It looks like a big CMC spot to me. So I might have to pay up for CMC this week, especially when I'm playing this game. I'm going to play this game as a shootout quite a bit with some big game stacks. I think Dart to McCaffrey actually would be the main game stack there. Obviously, we got to figure out who the pass catcher is for Dart that he's going to be going to. But not necessarily, actually, because he can run the ball in as well to score a lot of points on the ground. So let's pull this game up, look at pricing. Really, we like both offenses across the board is the moral of the story. A Dart at 5,200. He will probably be one of my highest owned quarterbacks this week. Tracy at 5,100. He will also be very high up in the player pool for maybe a core play. He is capable, I think, of getting 25-point games. Let's look at his game log from last year. I think he had a few big games last year. Go to 2024. Yeah, 129 yards here. Receiving. Got the no TDs there. So a few big games, a couple 100-yard games with some touchdowns. Looked like he was getting a decent amount of targets in the air as well. Was a former receiver. So when he was the dude, he had some games that went off, and I think this is actually just going to be a pretty fantastic matchup for him. So yeah, give me Tracy. Give me Tracy. What do we got over here? Oops. Sorry about that. There we go. We're back. Yeah, I like Tracy, though. I think it's a good spot for him this week. Wandell at 5,100 is definitely intriguing. He's become kind of the go-to guy. Last week, I think they kind of just lost their mojo a little bit when Scatterboo went out. And, yeah, they just didn't really have success in the second half. But all these other games, a lot of targets since Malik has been out. Like his chance to be in that 10-target range this week in what I think will be a back-and-forth game. Do expect Slayton to be playing this week. And he had a touchdown taken away from him last week on a BS offensive pass interference call. Russell really been struggling in the last few weeks, but that's besides the point here. So this stat line looks really bad, but there also could have been I think it was roughly a 70-yard touchdown on top of that. So all of a sudden that number starts to get a lot bigger. We got him the 100-yard bonus. So yeah, he would around 20 points if he catches that, or if that play isn't taken back. So I like Slayton here. Like Wandale. Pretty much it where I would go. I'm not going to go down here to Lil Jordan Humphrey or Hyatt or Ray McLeod. And at tight end, Theo Johnson, would like him to be a little cheaper, but we can mix him in. We can definitely mix him in. Probably don't want either of these defenses. Maybe at 2,400 with their pass rush, but everything else has been really bad, including their run defense. Definitely not going to play the Niners. That is way too high. People are, again, this is why I think the Niners are going to get too much credit on defense. What they currently have does not match up with the grades. So on our spreadsheet, these grades are skewed. This is a much bigger advantage for the Giants than what it's already even showing. So, yeah, very high on the Giants this week. Purdy comes back. We're interested in that. I don't know. I'd be as interested in Mac Jones. 8,800 for McCaffrey. I think we're going to have to get there this week. I full faded him last week, but to me, this is a much more likely 42 game type range for McCaffrey. So, well, even at that price, I think we're going to have to mix him in. We'll play around with it. I mean, it wouldn't be. Both running backs out of this game might not be a bad play either. We had a couple games like that last week. Chase Brown and Breece Hall in the same game. So it's not impossible for that to be the outcome. If Pearsall plays, I would definitely be interested in that. If not, Bourne and Jennings is very attractive actually at 4,300 if Pearsall doesn't play. He's been getting targets, but Atlanta is kind of a neutral matchup, but Houston that's a tough matchup. They're going to be able to move the ball a lot better this week against this defense. See where Kittle's at. Yeah, 4,800, he's still way too cheap, especially in this matchup. Their linebackers just aren't good either. So yeah, I like George Kittle a lot here. So the 49ers pricing besides McCaffrey looks really attractive. McCaffrey is very expensive, but we'll probably have to get there. At least some. I definitely won't be going more than 20% McCaffrey. People really want to lean into these really good running backs, which obviously makes sense. And last week, Jonathan Taylor was the top guy, but he also wasn't the guy you had to have. I'll go back to my Week 8 recap that we talked about in my recap video. But here's multiple lineups that you could have built with the stacking method that we use that doesn't include Jonathan Taylor at this 9,500 last week, even though he was RB1. We could have done it right here with Cook, Barkley, and Hall. Those were all better plays, even though they scored about 4 less points than him at their salaries. We could have built the Milly Maker lineup many different ways without Taylor in it because there were 3 other guys that had similar point totals to him. We go over here and look at it. You have 3 guys with much cheaper salaries and similar point totals. I want these guys over this guy every single time. So that's why I am never going to be a guy that's just going to shove a guy like Jonathan Taylor in my lineup, because most weeks there's going to be 2 or 3 guys that have similar numbers to the top scoring running back that are going to be cheaper. And if Jonathan Taylor is RB4 or 5, then he's a horrible, horrible play that week if you're trying to take down a GPP, which is what we're trying to do. We're trying to take down big tournaments. So I like to find the guys that outperform their salary rather than guys that are expensive that just perform at their salary. That being said, it is a sweet spot for McCaffrey, and I think that high upside is there. If, like in a week, like if we go back over here and look at this, there are weeks where there is an outlier guy, one guy that has like 10 or 15 more points than everybody else. Like if this was a 50 spot, then you had to have Jonathan Taylor. So there are scenarios in which you have to have that dude, but it happens maybe 1 or 2 times a year. It's not that common. So I definitely prefer to be in this range because that allows me to build a more balanced lineup with the lower tier guys that have their big weeks. So I like this game a lot, though. We will be building game stacks out of this game pretty frequently. The next game on our list is Pittsburgh and Indianapolis. This one is also a sneaky game that I think we could see a lot of points. The Colts secondary has been pretty banged up. We'll have to keep an eye on the injury report this week or see if they do anything trade-wise to help that secondary. Last week they were playing the Titans, so it's not really a good reflection of how good that defense is. I don't think their defense is great. I think that is a weakness to this team. They need to get some help in the secondary as well as just get healthy in the secondary. Since Travarius Ward has gone out, they've graded really bad in pass coverage. And Aaron Rodgers looks pretty good to me. They need another weapon for sure, but DK Metcalf could be interesting this week. In the run game, they have a slight advantage too. So Jaylen Warren could be in play for us. Then obviously Indianapolis against this Pittsburgh defense that has been bad. They've just looked old and slow, and they've been getting dominated week in and week out. Just had another really bad performance against the Packers. So to me, this actually looks like a game where Indy could be pushed because their defense isn't very good. And obviously Indianapolis is already a great offense against a bad Steelers defense. We want to have some exposure to that. So let's look at this game. Jonathan Taylor at 9,800. It's going to be hard to get to. I might full fade it. Like, he's very good and probably will dominate, but he's got to have like a 40 spot at that price to even be like close to usable. If he gets 50, he gets 50, but yeah, I might full fade it and just build this through Daniel Jones. I do think there's a chance this is more back and forth, so that would be a good outcome for Jones. And he's been solid, but hasn't really had many situations where they've had to continue to push. This might be one of those weeks where they do have to push. So 6,200, he's very attractive to me. Pittman's still too cheap at 5,900. Pierce is way too cheap. He's going to bust through with one of these big touchdowns here sooner or later. And Downs is too cheap too. I mean, he's been pretty solid. Got in the end zone the last couple weeks. He's a very good receiver. And Warren, he's priced appropriately now, but this could be his big week, so he'll be in play. So my initial reaction to this is I like Daniel Jones plus a pass catcher or 2, and I'm probably going to full fade Taylor. We'll look more at it as we get into the week and get a better feel for where the player pool's at. But even at 1,000 less, I'm more on McCaffrey this week than I would be on Taylor. I can say all this and he can put up a 50 spot and I look like a moron. But if he scores at 35 or 26, he was a bad play. Full stop. And that is a definitely a possible outcome. Like, these 40-point games are hard to achieve. Obviously, he did it only on 12 carries last week. It's pretty crazy. All right, let's check out the Pittsburgh side. Jalen Warren's definitely interesting at 5,500. Rodgers 5,800 is in play for sure. Metcalf at 5,500 we like. Roman Wilson got a little bit of run this past week. Yeah, 4-5 and a tutty. Yeah, we can mix in both these guys in some Rodgers stacks. I'd be more interested in Freiermuth at that end. I probably won't have these guys. I don't think any of these guys besides maybe Metcalf will be part of my like core player pool. Yeah, Warren will be as well. But when we build Rodgers lineups and we build these big game stacks, it'll definitely include Austin and Wilson in that as well. Don't want the defense. Yeah. I like if I were to play like Taylor, I primarily would be playing like as a big game stack. So I'd have Taylor plus Rodgers and a pass catcher type thing would be how I'd play that. But outside of that, I think I'm just going to full fade Taylor this week because of that price point. It's just going to be hard to build winning lineups with that price point. All right, a few more games here. Next up, we've got Tennessee at the Chargers. This is in Tennessee. This looks like a little bit better matchup for Tennessee than I anticipated. The pass rush for the Chargers has been pretty bad, obviously negative across the board, but Tennessee's just been bad across the board. So, yeah, maybe a little bit of Cam Ward, but probably not. We'll look at pricing. But on the Chargers side, we got Joe Alt back, so this number is going to be a lot better. I like this passing game a lot. I like McConkey and I like Gadsden the most out of it. Keenan Allen's snap share has gone down a little bit. QJ has been more put back into the sacrificial X role, and it looks like it's more McConkey and Gadsden. Also really like Vidal in this situation. So we'll look at pricing here. But for the most part, this is going to be Chargers. Get back to our Herbert stacks. A little bit more expensive than what I would like. 6,800. Not my favorite play, but definitely in play. Vidal at 6,300. He's been killing it since he's been the full-time starter. He's had 2 very usable weeks at his price point. So he'll be in our player pool for sure. McConkey at 6K. That's going to be smash button for me. I'll probably only have Allen and Johnston in a few of my Herbert stacks, but probably only 2 lineups each. I really believe in the McConkey and Gadsden. And wow, what a jump for Gadsden, up to 5,300 now. But rightfully so. Since week 6, he's been dominating and had the 32-point game against the Colts. So, like all of that. See what the defense is for the Chargers. Yeah, that makes sense. They probably won't be my go-to. Let's look at Tennessee. Cam 4,500, maybe. These guys are too expensive still. I was hoping more in the 4,000s. DK is in consideration. A.L. Manor is also in consideration for punt plays. I would lean more DK. He's been really solid the last couple weeks. A.L. Manor, not as much. Well, he did have 8 targets last week. Ward missed him on a wide open, what would have been touchdown too, for like a 70-yarder. But that's what happens when you play with a quarterback that just isn't playing well right now, and Ward is not playing well. Like, there's a lot of negative things happening around him, but he also is not doing his part either. Gunnar Helm, he's been getting more and more work. Had the touchdown last week. Can mix him in a little bit. He's a decent pump play. Okonkwo, we're out on. All right, 3 more games, my friends. Let's jump into New Orleans and the Rams. More of the story, the Rams passing game is awesome. We'll see how crazy Puka's price is here in a second. The run game is okay. We can look at Kyron a little bit. This defense is going to be a very attractive play, but they're going to be very expensive. And we want nothing on the New Orleans side. We have a rookie quarterback coming in that I don't think is very good. And they lost their center a couple weeks ago. We saw how much that affected them last week. Yeah, this just looks like a spot for the Rams to dominate. So we're not really interested in New Orleans. We'll check out pricing just in case, but Stafford, interested in at 6,300. Kyren, we can mix in a little bit at 68. One boom game this year, but I feel like if they get out to a big lead, they're probably going to give Corum more work. Which is what happened in LA. Puka at 8,500. I thought that price would be higher, honestly, coming off the injury. So we could get to Puka. Devontae's too high at 7,500. That'll probably be a full fade unless it's a Stafford lineup. Puka, though, 8,500, very interesting. And then Ferguson a few weeks ago, yeah, he got a little bit of work. Well, he had a touchdown, so excuse a little bit. Higbee's been getting more of it. So primarily Stafford to Puka. That would be what we'd be interested in. Outside of that, not too much in this game. Maybe a little Kyren, but 6,800, it's not as attractive. On the New Orleans side, no thank you. No thank you. Definitely no thank you. Yeah, we're out. No New Orleans players. We're not touching that. Let's look at the Rams D, see how expensive it is. The second most expensive. That makes sense. I'm going to try to get there a good chunk, though. This seems like by far the best matchup when we look at the spreadsheet for the defenses. Like, great pass rush. Special teams is irrelevant, but one of the biggest advantages just overall defense versus offense. So, like the Rams quite a bit there. Expensive, obviously. We'll have to play around with our builds throughout the week to see if we can mix them in or not. The next game, the Raiders versus the Jaguars in Vegas. I'm not really interested in any of the Raiders. They might be getting Brock Bowers back, though. We'll see where his price is at. Jacksonville, I'm interested in. Could be a Brian Thomas breakout game. All the energy is bad on Brian Thomas right now. This is a guy that got 1,300 yards receiving last year, though, and 87 catches. Like, they're not – he's young. They're not going to go away from him. I do think that there's some toughness concerns, legitimately. Like, when I was watching the game before their bye, they were down by like 30 points or whatever. Yeah, down 35-7. And they were still had the starters on the field. And he just got like a little jab to the shoulder and like came off the field. And to me, it looked like it was his plan the whole time to come off the field. So don't love that. And obviously we've had issues with him catching the ball over the middle of the field. But this matchup is really, really sweet. So I think one of two things is going to happen here. Travis Hunter, they're definitely going to try to get more involved. I feel really good about his price at 4,700. He will be a smash play for us this week. But I think we're going to get a pretty good indication on what the coaching staff thinks about Brian Thomas this week. They're either going to try to get him going and get him some confidence built in this really good matchup, or they're going to go like completely to Hunter and just be like, Brian Thomas, you haven't shown the toughness we need. We're kind of moving on. And maybe they actually are considering trading him. So we'll see how this game plays out. I'm going to be playing a good chunk of Thomas as if they do want to get him right. I like Lawrence a lot at 5,400. I like ETN a lot at 5,600. We'll see if we get the post-rookie buy bump or post-buy rookie bump for Tootin. At 4,600, could mix in a little bit. This is a huge advantage for Jacksonville, but I think ETN is a guy that has had a couple back-to-back tough matchups. This should be getting him going again. He's shown really well this year. I don't think there's anything that he's done to have them be like, oh, we need to go to Tootin now. I think it was just two back-to-back tough matchups, but ETN is still their guy, and Tootin is secondary. Tootin definitely could bust a big one, but I don't want to waste too many lineups on a $4,600 running back when there's other guys that we can feel more solid in. Hunter, though, that one jumps out to me. That big game's coming. I mean, we had it the last time out at 14 targets. Yeah, I think they're going to start going to him more across the middle, it being their reliable guy. Maybe they'll try to get Thomas going, but Hunter at 4,700, that's a very, very attractive play. I don't think Strange is eligible to come back yet. Yeah, he's a ways away. Man, all the defense, they got the defenses priced well this week. We're gonna have to figure that out. All right, our last game is obviously could be a really fun one with Buffalo and Kansas City. We know all the history there. The Bills kind of have a little bit of a disadvantage in the passing game and a big advantage in the run game. So I like Cook a lot this week. Obviously, he had the big game last week. But we also know in these games with Allen and Mahomes, these grades don't matter because these teams play differently when they play each other. If we get a back and forth game, obviously Allen could have that 40 or 50-point game, and same for Mahomes. Across the board, it looks like a good matchup for the Chiefs. For the Bills, it looks like a neutral matchup to even a bad matchup for the quarterback, but a very attractive matchup for the running backs. Running back for KC might be a little intriguing this week since Pacheco might be out. We might have a little interest in Kareem Hunt. So let's look at KC first. Mahomes 7,100, still very well within range. This is a very skewed number for Buffalo too. Like they haven't really played anybody. Let's go look at their game log real quick. But I really thought that Carolina could have a big game against them last week, and that's just not how it played out. But their secondary looks rough right now. So they did shut down Carolina, shut down Atlanta, lost to New England, but New England's solid. They played New Orleans, Miami, the Jets. Like really the only team that they played that we would say has a good offense, especially when they were healthy, was Baltimore, and they gave up 40 to Baltimore. The other one would be New England. They got 23 to New England. That's a pretty good performance, honestly. But with the injuries that they have in the secondary right now, and just even when they're not injured, they just don't have the guys. Yeah, this looks like a very tough spot for the Bills defense. I just don't see how they stop the Chiefs. This is in Buffalo, so we like that from the Buffalo side. I don't see a scenario in which they stop the Chiefs, though. So to me, it's whether or not do the Bills push back. And I think, yeah, of course they do. Of course they push back. So Mahomes, 7,100, very much in range. At running back, Hunt at 4,700. Ooh, that's very attractive. So he'll be up pretty high for me. We can see he's been getting, like, he's not, everybody talks about how he's dust, but Andy Reid doesn't think so. He's getting all the goal line stuff, all the short yardage stuff, and he's getting a few targets each week for the most part. Or I guess one target for most weeks. But I would expect him to get more this week. Smith should get more work as well, but I don't think he's going to get enough to be relevant for the Milly Maker. But Hunt could do a 25 spot without Pacheco there, as well as Ed Oliver's now out for an extended amount of time for Buffalo as well. He was their best run defender. So Kareem Hunt is very interesting. Rashee Rice, still probably too cheap for what he's doing. Worthy, I'd like to see a little cheaper. He's had down weeks since Rice has been back, but he's still very capable of a big game, especially in a game that could be a shootout like this. So we'll definitely mix in Worthy into our game stacks. Kelsey at 4,600, we can consider as well. He's had a few games that would justify that, but yeah, so I like Mahomes stacks. Obviously, Mahomes to Rice is the easiest one, but I want to mix in Worthy. I would even mix in a little Thornton, although he got no targets last week. Interesting. He'd been pretty consistently involved. Brown didn't do anything. And Worthy's still getting the target, so Worthy would be definitely the main focus outside of Rice. On the Buffalo side, obviously Josh Allen, at this price, we need him to be around 40, but he hasn't really needed to be pushed except for week 1. But this is the type of environment where he could have that. It's hard to stack with Allen, and sometimes you don't even need to. In these games, he can just go in Superman mode and score rushing touchdowns. Shakir is the go-to guy for him, and it seems like he is becoming, like, as the season progressed, he's been back more into his role that he was in last year. He doesn't generally have a huge ceiling, but this is the type of game where you could see a 25-plus point outburst at 5,300. He's definitely going to have to be one of our core plays. Coleman at 4,500 is interesting. Definitely want to build some skinny stacks with him and Allen. We'll see if Kincaid plays. Picked up a new knee injury from what I heard. Doesn't see anything there, but he only played 16 snaps. So for the most part, I would just avoid this tight end room. And I don't mind like an Allen to Rice game stack and just kind of leave it at that if you're in our non-Mahomes lineups. Like, because there's plenty of scenarios where Allen doesn't have to bring anybody along with him and he has a 40-point game. Like, each of these guys could have 5 catches for 50 yards and maybe one of them gets a touchdown. So it's not like a complete waste at these prices. If it's Coleman, that could be usable. But you can see scenarios where Josh has like 100 yards on the ground and 3 rushing touchdowns, or, he has that random big touchdown to one of these, like Elijah Moore, or Chris Samuel, or something like that nobody's going to have, and it doesn't really matter, and it's just one big play. They spread the ball out so much. If Palmer's out, it's easier. And it's already looking like he's not going to play. So Coleman and Shakir become more attractive, especially if we get any news on Kincaid. Could be a fun game, though. Let's go ahead and build a lineup. Who do we want to build around? Let's sort this by teams that have just the best. Teams that have the best overall grade over here. Detroit. Yeah, let's build a Jared Goff lineup to get us started for the week. Jared Goff. We'll go over here. We'll go Gibbs. And we're going to go our boy J-Mo. Now, what other offenses? We had Indianapolis was the next big one. But I don't think we can build a lineup with Gibbs and Taylor. I like McCaffrey a lot. Who else do we like? We like Cook. He's a good value. 7,200. Let's try it with Cook. And we'll have a bring back of Rashee Rice, but we're going to have to find some salary here as we get going. It's a good defense. The Rams are the ones that jumps out, but that's going to make it real hard for us to get anywhere else. Broncos, really the only other defense. And Houston down here are somewhat intriguing. Yeah, it's going to be hard to get lower than the Texans this week. I just don't see anything that intrigues me in the slightest. Like the Giants, maybe, but not really. The Texans seem like the lowest end that we could get to. Let's try the Broncos. So we're going to have to figure something out to punt. All right, one that jumps out to me that's cheaper that we can get to now. At wide receiver, let's go Travis Hunter. Tight end. Can we punt a little bit here? We could consider Colston Loveland. He's been getting more work. And they just have an amazing matchup against Cincinnati this week. So, yeah, let's go there. That opens up some space for us. We got Kayshon Boutte against Atlanta. We can definitely consider that. Bowers at 5K. Maybe. I like Kittle here. Let's see. So if we put Kittle into tight end, actually, and let's see what we can work with. If there's anything else that pops up for flex. Nothing too intriguing. Yeah, that's when I get to like DK here. I guess we could go. Yeah, I don't love the options here, so let's take Kittle out and see where we can find a middle ground. Let's go Johnson here. And that leaves us 5K, and then what can we get to? Yeah, go Johnson and Kittle, I guess. We'll go double tight end on this one. Let's see what else. Make sure we're not missing anything at tight end or at defense. Yeah, stick with that. All right, so we got a Lions stack here. Jared Goff with Jahmyr Gibbs and J-Mo having his breakout game. Then James Cook and Rashee Rice in that game in Buffalo that's likely to be a shootout. Travis Hunter playing the really bad Raiders defense coming off of the bye. Think that they're going to do things to get him more involved. Then we got the Theo Johnson and George Kittle in what I think is a game that's likely to shoot out as well. Two guys that are likely to score touchdowns. And then we got the Broncos taking on the horrific offensive line of the Houston Texans. Houston Texans are flying high after scoring some points last week against, remind me of who they played last week. Oh, yeah, against the San Francisco defense, who I think is going to be quite horrific for the rest of the year just because they have no guys left. So, yeah, like this a lot. This is our first shot at the Millie this week. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Hopefully that was helpful for you. We'll have the player pool video out tomorrow where I will start breaking down specifically who I will be playing and the stacks and combinations that I like and will be attacking throughout the week in order to win that $1 million. Appreciate y'all watching. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and like and comment. Thank you, my friends. Have a great day and good luck in week 9.